And we're tied at 106. Now Kemba. He's got the ball. All eyes on him.
Got to take the last shot. Either we win it or there's overtime.
Lamb's going to have to fire. Jimmy Lamb wins it on a walk-off.
Blake Griffith's trying to call timeouts. They have to.
Detroit basketball.
And welcome into Views from the Sideline. It is December 13th, 2018. Alongside me, there's an empty chair to my right, but then there's Joey Tysick.
Yeah, I feel all alone. Back to the original podcast.
I mean, someone had to boot Malik off the show. It's getting a little crowded in here. Yeah. No, all kidding aside, Malik is off this week. He is out of town. I'm sure he will be back on the show next week. We had a week hiatus, some scheduling difficulties, weren't able to make it on the show, but we are back, ready to break down all things bad with your Detroit Pistons, all things bad with your Detroit Lions. Maybe talk some positive things somewhere down the line. You never know. Detroit sports, it's tough.
College basketball, that's a positive.
Good call. Michigan hoops playing well, Michigan State playing well. We'll get into them too. But yeah, when you tuned in, the first thing you heard was Jeremy Lamb sending the Pistons to their sixth straight loss. 6 straight losses ever since they beat Golden State Warriors at home. Everything was going right. They were the 4th seed in the East. And then the wheels fell off. They've lost 6 straight. They got injured. Reggie Bullock's been out. Stanley Johnson's been out. Ish Smith's out for 3 weeks. Glenn Robinson's out for 3 weeks. Henry Ellenson's out for 3 weeks, which that doesn't really matter. So they've just been knocked up, and they do not look good. We'll get into the Pistons and what's wrong with them later on in the show. I want to start with some football. It's been a week without talking Lions football.
Not much has changed. Not much.
They won a game, though. That's some news.
They beat the Cardinals.
A win's a win, Joe.
I guess. I would have rather them lost this game, to be honest.
Well, here's the thing. They're technically in the playoff hunt. So I want it. The Joey confidence meter. Are we kicking it back up?
0. I told you until they're in the playoffs, set in stone in the playoffs, I'm done with this team for the year. Until I see in week 17, Lions have clinched the wild card playoff spot, then we'll be back on board. Then we'll have a little confidence going up against the Saints or the Rams.
Not even if we go into week 17 with a win, the Lions make the playoffs. You're still not confident. There's no confidence. There's not a little bit of a...
If they're in the playoffs.
No, I'm saying they're going into week 17 with needing to win to make the playoffs.
So they go to week 17, and if they win, they make the playoffs.
Do you have confidence?
I mean, I'll be a little bit more excited for that.
But it would be in Lambeau, right? Week 17's in Lambeau?
I believe so.
Yeah. So that's a
But
loss.
Green Bay is not very good, so...
It's Green Bay. Green Bay to the Lions is kryptonite, playing in Lambeau. Anyways, though, I want to get your opinion on the Lions, kind of what's gone wrong for them on the year, what's gone right, kind of break down the 2018 Detroit Lions.
Terrible. They're just terrible. And, I mean, part of it is injuries. Ziggy Ansah has not stayed healthy all year long. Matt Stafford's been banged up a little bit. They've had little injuries here and there where guys are out. They just can't be consistent. Patricia hasn't worked out as well as people thought he would. The play calling has been suspect all year long. It's really kind of unusual the way that they're going about things. And like even when you had Kerryon Johnson had break a couple 100-yard games, then he just went away. then he got hurt a couple times, been banged up as well.
I feel like he hasn't been getting the play calls as much either, though.
Right. LeGarrette Blount's been banged up. It's just there's no consistency anywhere on this team, and it's just abysmal. I can't believe that they're in the playoffs, like in the hunt technically.
Well, that just kind of speaks to the state of the NFC.
Yeah.
There is, I think we talked about it before the show, if you want to bring up how many teams are actually still technically in the hunt, because that that last wild card spot is the 6-6 Vikings, and I believe it's like 5 or 6 teams all are probably within a 2-game span of the Vikes.
Yeah, there's quite a few teams. I'm trying to look it up real quick, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 8 teams.
Wow.
That technically have a chance. Granted, some teams have more chances than the others, but, the Lions are in the same boat as the Philadelphia Eagles, if that tells you anything about the NFC this year. It's kind of crazy.
And that's really the only spot really left up for grabs. I mean, there's going to be some shifting and some moving with the seeding, but 1 through 5 are pretty much locked in when it comes to the playoff hunt in the NFC. Yeah, it's crazy to talk to the Lions have a chance to make the playoffs, but more than likely they are going to be picking pretty high in the draft this year once again.
I would hope so.
And honestly, I would have liked to see them lose a lot more games than what they have done, because at the end of the day, you're not benefiting your team with a coach who, personally, I think will be gone after next season. I don't think Patricia's going to get his act together. I haven't been a fan of Patricia ever since the last preseason game. I was all out on Patricia. Just didn't seem to click. Belichick disciples never seem to work out well when they go out to their own team. And I wonder why.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It's kind of a weird thing because so many teams have tried it and they always think it's going to work and it sounds like it's going to work and it never does. And I don't know exactly what that is. I think the Lions more or less Jim Bob Cooter needs to go. I think he's proven, especially this year, that just the play calling on offense has been really weird and it's questionable at times, and it seems like defenses are really picking on it a lot and they're able to figure things out really quickly.
Because it seems like it's a lot of basic play calling.
Yeah.
Some halfback runs right through the middle, some pick plays, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, so I would say if they're going to try to keep Patricia for a longer haul and they think that he's doing a good job internally, that they need to look into getting rid of Jim Bob Cooter and moving on to something else to shake it up a little bit, I guess.
And I wonder if they actually will do that. I'm not, like I say probably week in on this show, I have no confidence in Lions ownership, no confidence in, I have a little bit of confidence in Bob Quinn. I think he's done an okay job.
Yeah.
He's definitely could have done a lot better. He's missed on some draft prospects. He's missed on some deals. But I have probably the most confidence I've ever had in a Lions front office just because of how bad it has been in years prior.
Right.
They have to move on from Jim Bob Cooter. I'm surprised they haven't moved on mid-season. It's been that bad. But yeah, when it comes to, I want to talk a little bit about the draft for the Lions because they're going to be picking high more than likely.
Right.
What's a position you think the Lions need to focus in on in that first round?
I would say they'd have to go defense, and they might, if they go defense, they might just have to take the best available. There's a lot of really good defensive ends, and there's a couple of linebackers in this draft class that they could go after. It depends on where they finish, and I mean, unfortunately, people are starting to talk that Nick Bosa will be the number 1 overall pick from Ohio State. He sat out part of the season, or second half of the season, I believe, because he got hurt and he wants to prepare for the NFL. A guy like that would be great for the Lions because he's a spark plug anywhere on defense. Now, I don't think they're going to necessarily get him, but I think middle linebacker is probably the biggest issue for the Lions, so they'd have to look into a position like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Trying to think of,
and they would need a linebacker that's good at pass coverage, because that's been the Lions' biggest issue is running backs getting out to the flat and linebackers not being able to cover or read the play and just missing. And that's been one of their biggest problems.
Very, very true. There's really not much left to break down when it comes to the Lions. I feel like we do it every week.
They got the Bills. They got the Bills this week. Should be another win. So they'll still be in the playoff talk.
I disagree with you that it should be. I mean, coming into the year, I thought it should be a win. Bills are favored right now by ESPN.
Which is kind of weird, but
they're playing in Buffalo. Buffalo is only a game behind the Lions.
Yeah.
They're 4-9. The Lions are 5-8. The Lions have struggled tremendously on the road.
Yeah, and they usually do. And the Bills' defense is good, so, maybe.
I think it might be a little bit of a dogfight, to be honest with you. They might have to win it in a last-second field goal. That's just the state of the Lions and how they are right now.
Could be.
But let's transition to a little bit of positivity in the show. Some college basketball before we go back down to the negativity. That's just how we do it.
Let's go on a roller coaster real quick.
It's just going to be a fun time. But Michigan Wolverine basketball coming into the year, I didn't have this much confidence that this team would be that good. They've been getting tremendous jumps out of their players from last year. Jordan Poole looks really well. He's had some big games. He's been actually pretty consistent, which has been nice.
Big game against South Carolina.
Very big game. I think he finished for like 28 points or something like that. Michigan is 10-0. They're number 5 in the nation right now. They have some big wins on their resume, too. They beat UNC by double digits, by 17. They beat Purdue by almost 20. South Carolina, they beat by 11. And they're kind of getting into a little bit of the weaker part of their schedule. They got Western Michigan coming up on the 15th. Probably their next game that will give them a little bit of difficulty is after the new year.
Yeah, January 6th, they play Indiana, who's 25th right now.
I'll even say Penn State is a little bit of a trap game coming back from that break.
Yeah, they're a good program usually.
That's not a team you can sleep on. But yeah, Indiana, Penn State, those are probably the next couple games that are going to give Michigan a little bit of difficulty. But they really have stormed through the early part of the schedule that had some difficult games on it. Again, the Villanova win is the win of the year. They just destroyed them, almost beat them by 30 points. Villanova they've had some bad losses, but they are still number 8 in the nation. What is your feeling of Michigan basketball right now as we head into maybe closer to the second half of the season?
I would argue that UNC was a bigger win, just because I think a lot of people did realize that Villanova was going to be down this year. But it was impressive the way that they did it because Villanova did have a few more players. But I think overall the UNC game was a better just overall game, whereas a slightly more competitive game. So it proved a little bit more. And, right now Michigan is just rolling. To me, they look like the real deal. And if they can get into conference play coming into the new year, the Big Ten is actually playing really well this year. So if Michigan can keep rolling and keep beating these teams in conference play, they're going to be right up there with the top seeds. And they can climb up if they can just keep this run going.
And talking about the Big Ten and conference play and how well the Big Ten is playing, Michigan's 2-0 in conference play, Ohio State 2-0, Indiana 2-0, Michigan State 2-0, Wisconsin 2-0. So a lot of teams playing really well. Ohio State's 8-1 on the year. Indiana's 25 in the country, but they're 8-2.
Yep.
Michigan State's 8-2. Wisconsin's 8-2.
Six teams from the Big Ten that are ranked: Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Maryland, Ohio State, and Indiana.
And we're going to talk about the Big Ten is back when it comes to basketball. These are all teams that can make some noise as we approach March. This could be a year where during March Madness, a lot of Big Ten teams make it past the round of 64 and the round of 32.
Maryland fell out. They were early. They lost a game. Iowa is in though right now. So it's Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, MSU, Wisconsin, Iowa.
Gotcha. Okay.
But Maryland was right there. So they're a strong team.
How long do you think Michigan can keep up this undefeated streak, Joe?
I don't know. It's kind of tricky because I think that they're good enough and I'm still not the biggest believer in the Big Ten right now. It's still early on in the season, and like I said, conference play hasn't really started yet. But if they can, I feel like they can make it all the way to their Michigan State games. And then when it gets to Michigan State, it's always that toss-up. Now, Michigan's had the advantage as of recently, but you never want to count Michigan State out. And they don't play Michigan State until towards the end, honestly. They play Michigan State February 24th. So that's like a date to watch out for. Obviously, another big game is January 19th. They play Wisconsin. So that's a pretty tricky one. Ethan Happ is a monster. And
I can't believe Ethan Happ is still there. It just feels like I've been calling his name for a couple of, like 3 or 4 years.
But the good thing
now.
for that game is that Michigan has Teskey, who's really played super well this season. So I think he could actually defend Happ pretty well. I don't know. Like, I think they could almost make it all the way. I don't think they will, just because they are still on the younger side overall. But the way that they play on both sides of the ball is really impressive to me. They play really good offense. They play a beeline offense, but they've really, really bought into the defensive game.
And they're a very long and athletic team, which plays really well into how teams want to play their style of defense nowadays. They want to be able to switch everything. They want to be able to kind of deflect the ball, get in the passing lanes, get in transition, get early offense going. And I think Michigan has the roster capabilities to do that. And that's what's really playing into their hand right now, especially in a Big Ten where they haven't played the top teams in the Big Ten yet. They haven't played the Michigan States. They haven't played the Ohio States. Once you get to those games, then you'll start to see what this Michigan team really is about, how they're going to perform when it gets to the big stage, like the Big Ten tournament or March Madness, the big tournament. But right now, I got nothing but positive things to say about Michigan. You really can't harp on any singular thing they do poorly right now.
Right.
Let's transition a little bit to MSU, number 9 in the country. They're 8-2 on the year. Their last loss was to Louisville in overtime by 4 points. Joey, I want to get your first initial thoughts of how the Spartans have played so far this year based on your expectations.
I think they've played right about to the expectations that I thought they would. I thought they would be better than Michigan at this point. Obviously, Michigan has proven themselves, though, to really come out strong this year. But I thought Michigan State maybe would have peaked a little bit sooner than Michigan. But State's struggled a little bit. The good thing for State is that Jeremy Langford is having a fantastic season. Cassius Winston is playing really well.
Nick Ward is starting to come along, too. He had 26 points against Iowa.
As long as, I say it all the time, but as long as Nick Ward can stay on the floor, he is probably their best player, in my opinion.
Really?
Just because what he brings to the table offensively and a little bit on the defensive side. But he just gives them a different element, and he can post up and they can give it to him. He can kick it out to the shooters, free those guys up, and I think it just makes their offense more dynamic. And, you know, they're the same way, though, as Michigan, where they're kind of younger and they got a lot to prove, and I think they're doing it, and I think they're going to keep rising. They got a couple easy games as well. They won't start conference play till the new year for the most part. They'll have Ohio State sometime right after New Year, and then they got another little break, and then they start playing some bigger teams. So they got some time to work everything out, but I think they'll stay right in the top 10, and I think it's going to be between them and Michigan at the end.
And I think the thing that is helping Michigan State, too, is they don't have really any bad free throw shooters on their team. Nick Ward isn't the greatest. Xavier Tillman's not really the best, but they're all above 60% from the free throw line. And in this day and age, in college basketball, that's not bad at all. When you have guys shooting mostly in the lower 80% and higher 70s, you're on a good track, and you need to be able to make your free throws if you're going to go far down the line, especially in tournament play. They also have been shooting the 3-ball pretty well. Like you said, Josh Langford, he's shooting a 45% clip from deep, which is huge. Cassius, almost 40%. Matt McQuaid, almost 40%. You could go down the line. They have a lot of good shooters, and they're making their free throws at the line. The thing, though, I know I gave Nick Ward his props with his big game against Iowa. I really need to see him crash the glass a little bit more. Yes, he's only playing about 22 minutes per game, but to only be pulling down 6 rebounds against lesser competition, that's something that needs to change, especially if Michigan State's going to dominate teams in the paint.
Yeah, he's never been like the aggressor on rebounding. They've always let that.
But I think that's more of a mentality by Nick Ward. He kind of lets
I
that
agree.
go.
But I think they have more of those hustle guys in Tillman and wow, why can I not think? They got guys like Aarons and things like that. They got more Goins as well. They have more of those spark plug kind of guys that will go after rebounds. And that doesn't necessarily excuse Nick Ward from going to get rebounds, but it is like it allows him to do less, at least on the glass. But I do agree with you.
And let's talk a little bit about kind of the AP top 25 for college basketball before we transition into the NBA. Tennessee had a big win beating Gonzaga, putting Kansas back at number 1 in the country. What's a team in the top 10 that surprises you so far this year? Do you want me to read them off to you?
Tennessee, for sure.
Tennessee?
Just automatically. Tennessee hasn't been good, at least on the men's side, in a little while. We haven't really seen them too much. I think they've made the tournament a couple times. But, they were kind of a down program for a while. And then all of a sudden, they're playing really well this season. And now, especially beating Gonzaga, that's a big win. Knocks them off the number 1. I still don't know if that should have put them above Michigan, the way that Michigan's playing. I feel like they got kind of snubbed on this last little poll, but I mean, overall, that's not that big of a deal. But I would definitely say that Tennessee is by far the most surprising. For the most part, like the rest of the teams that are up there, Kansas, Duke, Tennessee, like I said, is the surprise. Gonzaga, those teams are always there. Virginia, Nevada, who we talked about, was supposed to have a really strong season this year.
And they are having a strong season so far.
Right. Auburn is a little bit of a surprise.
I was going to say, Auburn is kind of my surprise team. You don't usually hear Auburn as a basketball school.
Right. I mean, their program's been building over the years, but yeah, they're a little bit of a surprise.
They've definitely made a jump this year, though, from years past. Yes, they've been building, but I think this might be that first year Auburn becomes a little bit of a power when it comes to college hoops as we get later in the year.
Yeah. A couple surprises just outside of the top 10, the inclusion of some of these smaller schools like Buffalo and Furman and Houston, they're undefeated. But a lot of the times in this poll, they'll take that into account that, they play for a smaller team or smaller conferences and things. However, Furman did beat Villanova pretty quickly after Michigan did. So that was a big win even for them, even with Villanova being down. But to have Buffalo and Houston in the top 25 is pretty cool for those schools, I would say, especially like Houston's another one of those teams that's usually a football school.
Yep.
Buffalo's usually always in the tournament, but to have some of those teams are a little bit surprising, at least this early on in the season.
No, I completely agree with you. It's cool to see those lesser known teams get some love, especially early on here in the top 25. I'm sure it'll change as the year goes on and those teams will start to fall out a little bit. But as of now, it's a cool story. It's cool to see. But Joe, we got to unfortunately transition to some NBA basketball.
Okay.
Your Detroit Pistons. What is going wrong with the Pistons? They are 13-13. They've lost 6 straight. They were the 4 seed in the East before this losing streak happened. They currently sit at 7, a game and a half above Orlando. Thankfully for them, if you're Goris hoping for the playoffs, which I know he is, the Pistons really right now have no competition. Should not be worried about missing the playoffs because the 8th seed is the Orlando Magic at 12-15, and then the 9th seed is the 11-16 Miami Heat.
You don't think Miami is a little bit underperforming as well, though?
No, I think they're underperforming, but I think Orlando is overperforming, and that's the only team that's going to really jump.
Okay.
Maybe Washington, but I think Washington's going to blow it up before they have a chance to kind of get things together.
Yeah, I think so, too.
So they stand at number 7 right now. And, I mean, if you want any sort of positive thinking when it comes to the Pistons, there's no LeBron in the East. So whatever matchup you get in the first round, you actually have a chance to win a game, which is nice.
Unless you're up against the Sixers or the Raptors.
I disagree. I think they have a chance to win a game.
If you're talking about a game,
yeah, I'm saying win a game.
Oh, okay.
Win a playoff game for the first time in 11 years.
That's sad to say. I don't know. That Toronto's rolling.
I still think I don't trust Toronto in the playoffs.
And if Philly's healthy, I don't know. Like the Pistons have trouble against Philly.
But Philly has some depth issues too. In a 7-game series, I think the Pistons could exploit, at least for a game, some of that depth issue.
And even with Toronto's issues as far as the playoffs have gone, I just don't I don't know. The Pistons have so many problems with guarding guards this year. I can't understand it.
Well, I can completely understand it. Reggie Jackson has no lateral movement, and he's your starting point guard. It starts right there. If they had they would. I'm not sure if they would be better off starting Ish Smith just because of how disgruntled Reggie Jackson would be and how poorly he would perform with that second unit.
Let him be disgruntled. Let him take a seat and let him take a lesson about how to play harder.
That's not going to happen.
I'm just saying. If he wasn't such a diva, I'm going to say it right now, maybe he would be better.
So what's something the Pistons can change, Joe? They have that they're playing inconsistently. What's kind of a thing this Pistons team is lacking right now?
A number 2 scorer. They need somebody else besides Blake Griffin to step up. Luke Kennard had 1 game. I liked it.
And Blake wasn't playing that game.
Right. And that's what I like to see. I like to see Luke Kennard kind of break out for a game. But they don't have anybody else. Even when Bullock's been healthy, he's had a couple nice games here and there, but nowhere near what he was playing like last year, especially towards the end of the season. And Andre's not going to ever be a primary scorer.
You don't want him to be a primary scorer.
You want him to if he's going to have a 20-20 game, you want it to be off of all those offensive rebounds to score those 20 points. You don't want to circulate your offense through him. We tried it last year. It didn't work that well. So they just need somebody else to step up. And I don't know who it is anymore. I thought it was Bullock maybe. I thought maybe Glenn Robinson could do it. He hasn't looked all that great. He's looked good on defense, but not so much on offense. And now he's hurt. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to come from is the problem.
I think it has to come via trade or via an acquisition, but somehow. Here's the way I rank it when it comes.
Go get Carmelo Anthony. I don't care. I don't care anymore.
Matter. Here's the way I rank the Pistons' scoring options. Number 1, Blake Griffin. Number 2, Blake Griffin. Number 3, Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
Number 4, Reggie Jackson, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Just go get Carmelo Anthony. Think about it. It's like a lose-lose it's a lose-lose situation. It's like a win-win situation, technically.
It's a lose-lose.
It doesn't matter. That's ultimately what I mean. It just doesn't matter. If they go get him,
sell some tickets.
He likes to score the basketball. He's been offended that in the last couple of teams that he's been on, he hasn't been able to be a primary scorer.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the primary scorer on this team, but he could definitely be the secondary scorer.
He would definitely get more touches on this Pistons team opposed to anywhere else.
Just let him throw up some shots. I don't care. Even if he plays bad, it's not going to hurt anything.
I'm fine with it completely because if you don't have Carmelo, you have Stanley Johnson or Reggie Bullock. And Reggie, like you said, has struggled. And I think Reggie just plays better in a reserve role is what it comes down to. His 3-ball was off the charts last year. He's struggling a little bit this year. Got into a little bit of a rhythm. Then he got hurt. And we haven't seen him for a little bit. He should be coming back this weekend from what Dwayne Casey has told the media. So we'll see. If they're not going to make any moves when it comes to adding a wing player, I just want to see Dwayne Casey give Luke Kennard a starting spot. Just see what you got. Give Luke confidence. Say, Luke, you're going to play 28 to 30 minutes every night. Do what you got to do. Be aggressive. You're our best perimeter shooter. Shoot the ball when you're open. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, let him go back to his Duke days. He was a capable scorer. He could get his own shot. Let him just go free a little bit for maybe a couple games. Try it out.
And I think that's what helped Stanley Johnson early in the year. Dwayne Casey gave him confidence. They put him on the bench and said, you know what, Stanley? You lead this second unit. You do what you want. We're not going to hold you back. Play your game. And that helped him, especially when he went to the bench. He started to provide a little bit of a spark, both offensively and defensively. Now, will he be here throughout the season? That remains to be seen. I think he could be a trade chip for certain teams. I know there are teams that, for some reason, still like his upside. They think, oh, if we get our hands on him, we could do something about him. I think
it's because they've been watching Eric Ebron in the NFL. And they're like, hey,
yeah, I think that's
there's a Detroit guy that's struggling, and, he had a lot of talent coming out of college. Maybe we'll take a try on him and watch. Stanley Johnson will go out and he'll be jamming on everybody like he was in college.
And Stanley was the number 3 player coming out of high school, too. If Stanley Johnson had Donovan Mitchell's leaping ability, I think it would be something special. But he doesn't have that as much hops as I thought he did coming out of college. But I know San Antonio's still interested in him. With Spurs, how they're going right now, I could see him taking a waiver or a waiver on him. We'll see, though. I think there's a lot of movement that could happen with the Pistons, along with the whole entire Eastern Conference, because LeBron is no longer there. These NBA executives, these Eastern Conference executives for that matter, they see a wide open East. They want to take advantage of it. I think this is going to be the most active we've seen the trade market in the East in a long, long time. Because while LeBron has been in the East for the last 8 years prior, everybody knew you're probably not getting by LeBron. LeBron out west, Milwaukee thinks they have a chance to go to the finals. Indiana probably thinks they have a chance to go to the finals if everything lines up well. Toronto, they look like the class of the East. Boston, I still think is up there. I think they're going to turn it around. But you could go down the line. There's a lot of teams with opportunities. I think if they get one more piece, puts them over the hump. So I think it'll be a really fun trade season this year.
I hope so. Need something to look forward to.
I feel like that's the only thing to look forward to as Piston fans now.
Because that's kind of what happened last year. It was like, oh, we're going down the toilet hole, and then we got Blake Griffin. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
We gave up Tobias, but he's balling out in LA now.
I'm happy for Tobias, but I mean, to be fair, Blake Griffin's balling here in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, it basically turned into a Tobias for Blake Griffin because Avery Bradley was.
But the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
That's true. Yeah. That one turned out pretty.
That one's tough to swallow. Because think about your point guard situation right now.
True. That's true.
That's the thing where it gets me. Talking about point guards, I have to officially retire something that's very personal to me. It's time for me to retire my love for Reggie Jackson as the Pistons point guard. I'm officially done with it. I'm burying it.
I'm so excited to hear those words come out of your mouth.
It's official. I'm officially over Reggie Jackson. I can't believe I'm saying it. I thought he would bounce back. It's a shame from what he came from in 2016.
Can you say that Brandon Jennings is a better point guard for the Pistons
because he played in China.
Reggie Jackson?
No, I can't. But that doesn't take away. It doesn't take away from me being done with Reggie Jackson. It's a sad day, Joe. I need some consoling.
It's not sad. He's been bad since
he
joined the team.
For me, it's sad. That's 100% false.
He's bad.
Right now,
he's a quality role player. Never meant to be a star. Never.
I wonder where his next stop will be, because I think we
G League.
Stop. Joe.
No, he'll be on a team.
He
would come off the bench.
You know where I could see him?
Almost any other team.
You know where I could see him go? Houston.
Why?
I feel like Daryl Morey wouldn't care. He just adds to the payroll.
But they're about to get
talent.
They're about to get Brandon Knight coming back. He's trying to get himself healthy.
Brandon Knight's another one of my boys, and trust me, if we did a trade for Brandon Knight for Reggie Jackson, I'd be rocking my Brandon Knight jerseys for weeks.
Yikes.
Man.
Wasn't a couple of years ago the Pistons were trying to get Eric Bledsoe? They were in talks for that?
They had a deal in place to acquire Eric Bledsoe early last season.
Yeah.
Then Milwaukee came about and one-upped them on the deal. They actually had paperwork going, filing it. Milwaukee came back with a better offer. They took Milwaukee's deal.
Because he struggled last season, but he's playing really well this season.
He's playing well off Giannis, and they finally got that miscommunication figured out because Eric wanted to be that number one guy. Right. So did Giannis. He kind of bought in now, which is cool. But if the Pistons make that Bledsoe trade, I wonder if they still get Blake Griffin. Because I think they're attaching a first-round pick to that deal as well.
Yeah, probably not.
So, in hindsight, I'm fine. It didn't work out, but,
Yeah.
Joe, we talk about this, I think, on every show. Do the Pistons need a restart? I say 100% yes.
Yeah. I think so too. And I think we both agree they won't, but they need to. Every time we talk about it, they don't have any assets. They don't have any talent. They're just
I disagree. I think they do have some assets, but
they're just stuck in the middle of the road, and that's a terrible place to be.
in NBA purgatory.
In professional sports in general, it's so terrible to be the middle of the road because you're going to be borderline playoffs, and you're never really going to get a good chance to be better because you have to spend more on less talent. Example, John Lure. And
what a terrible contract.
You don't get the necessary draft picks that you get. And on the ones that you do get, a.k.a. Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson, you got to make sure that they're going to work out, and they haven't. That's the problem. This upcoming draft for the Pistons is going to be really big, I think.
If they have a draft pick.
Yeah, that's true.
I could totally see them trading a draft pick for a veteran player to help push them to the playoffs.
And that's why you have to be really careful with draft picks this year. I know a lot of people are trying to make a push for the playoffs, but if you don't see yourself getting over those top teams in the East, I don't think you waste your draft pick to push for a first-round exit.
Especially for a Pistons team that they might not lack assets, but they don't have as many as most teams.
Right.
A draft class headlined by R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, I could go down the line. And that's just 3 Duke players I just listed off.
Right.
If you miss the playoffs, you have a chance to land an absolute star, a player that will sell tickets. If you get a top 3 pick, you get Zion Williamson, you are selling out arenas. Even LCA will sell out if you draft Zion Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm 100% for them completely blowing it up. Trade away everything. Just tank. But there's zero chance Gorse will ever do that because for some reason he thinks sticking in NBA purgatory, just getting to the playoffs and creating a slight buzz will draw fans back to the Pistons. That's not going to happen. You have to build a winner from the foundation up. And that's not what the Pistons have done since the early 2000s.
See, this is where the Pistons should almost pull what the Raiders are doing in the NFL. If the Pistons were to totally flip the script and they went for a team that was pushing to make the playoffs, or maybe a team that's struggling that just wants one more piece or something that they think will get them over the hump or something, and we could trade like Andre Drummond for a first-round pick and just acquire picks for this draft, I think that would be huge. You could trade, if you could get rid of like Andre Drummond for a first-round pick and then maybe turn Blake into a first-round pick as well.
That won't happen.
That would be one of those teams that's pushing for a playoff spot, or not, maybe not a spot, but to get farther in the playoffs. That's what you would have to get for Blake Griffin. So it wouldn't be like a lottery pick, but I think you could get a later first round pick maybe. But I think those are things you would have to look at and just try to acquire as many picks as you can at this point, because the Pistons need to figure out a way to turn around and get new talent. And they're not going to be able to do that through free agency. They're not that kind of market.
I mean, and you bring up free agency. The one time they had a meeting with an actual star player, they got a meeting with Al Horford.
Yep.
That summer they signed John Lure. That's really the only instance I've seen the Pistons talk to a big name. At the time, do I consider Josh Smith a big name when they talked to him?
Yes.
Yes. Remember when we thought 4 years, $54 million was a lot of money?
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That seems like so long ago. But it's just, you're not going to build a Detroit team through free agency. The way you build it is through the draft initially and then through trade. The Pistons are doing it backwards. They're doing it through trade and have draft on the back burner.
Right.
I think that's going to change a little bit with Stefanski in the front office and actually a little bit of control in the front office, not being controlled by a coach that's supposed to push for the playoffs, like when we had Stan Van Gundy. So it's a touchy subject for me because I know they're not going to become anything great the way they're going. They're just going to be good is the best case scenario. The best case scenario is a 46-win team.
Right. And the other problem, too, is they're already like in a position to where they can't really tank to get those top 3 spots. I don't think anybody's catching Phoenix at this point.
Well, at least it doesn't matter as much anymore with the lottery. They did a lot of lottery reforms. So
True, but I think it still plays a pretty big
it does.
role.
It does play a role, but at least gives teams a better chance that just missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because the Pistons, who were, when they missed the playoffs last, were the number 12 spot in the lottery, had like a 1.7% chance of drawing a top 3. And before 1.7% was when you were at number 7. So it's a big jump.
I mean, you never know. Maybe they could pull an Orlando Magic from the 90s. You know, go get Shaq. That'd be great.
Zion is today's Shaq, right?
I mean, kind of.
That guy would sell so many tickets. That's why I'm a little surprised that Goris thinks he needs to win opposed to tank and draft the basketball phenom. Not even NBA, not even college basketball. A basketball phenom in Zion Williamson. That, I don't know.
And I actually think that, like, the more that I've, like, thought in depth, because we talked about it before, like, if you could take RJ Barrett as Zion Williamson, we all kind of agreed that you'd take RJ Barrett. But the more that I think about it, I almost think that you should. I'm starting to lean towards Zion just because of that wow factor. And that makes you into a team that players want to come play for because they're like, well, this guy is just a human highlight reel.
Creates a buzz in the arena.
Yeah.
Creates a great atmosphere.
So maybe you get more free agent draw out of a Zion Williamson rather than RJ Barrett.
Yep, definitely. Kind of piggybacking on Pistons, whether they should restart. According to ESPN's Brian Windhorst, that's anything but the case. The Pistons, along with the New Orleans Pelicans and the Sacramento Kings, are the 3 most active buyers on the trade market. Windhorst cites Goris' vision of making the playoffs as the main reason why the Pistons are being such buyers on the trade market. He lists Luke Kennard, first-round pick, as like their most tradable assets. I really don't want to trade either of those.
Yeah.
I think those are the 2 assets you got to hang on to.
And even like we've talked about in the past, if you were to trade those for like a John Wall type of deal, like it's almost iffy, like if that's going to put us over the hump per se. Like is that a big 3 where you have John Wall, who's had some injury problems, who's getting older, Blake Griffin, who's getting older, he's played super good this season, and Andre Drummond, like is that a big 3 that competes with anybody? I'm not sold on it.
I mean, it's better than Reggie Jackson.
Right, I understand that, but like to get over Philly or Milwaukee
I'm
or
not sure.
Toronto.
Milwaukee maybe. I'm not sure about Philly once they get everything rolling, or Toronto.
I mean,
or Boston.
maybe it slides you into the 4 seed.
I think you can make some noise with that type of roster, but can you actually get over the hump? Probably not.
Yeah, because Boston's still underperforming, and
And I'm not picking the Pistons to beat Boston.
If they get rolling, then those top 4 teams, the Pistons, I think, just struggle matchup-wise heavily against those teams.
Well, it's because all those teams are so star-driven at the point guard position where the Pistons lack tremendously at defending.
Yeah.
They cannot stay in front of Ben Simmons, Kyle Lowry, Kyrie Irving. Where does this all stem from? Reggie Jackson.
And nobody can guard Giannis, so that's not their fault.
And they even try to put Bruce Brown and Stanley Johnson on Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons is just a bully on the block. Good thing Ben Simmons doesn't have a jump shot. Otherwise, it would be absolutely insane for the Pistons trying to guard him.
Right.
How do you feel about Windhorst saying the Pistons are a buyer, though?
It doesn't surprise me.
But you don't.
It's like we said,
yeah.
We think Gores is just, he's trying to do whatever he can
to fill that arena
to make it look like this team is capable of doing something, which we all know it's not really that capable of doing anything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And then another little Pistons rumor too. Before I get into this rumor that's a little bit juicier, I think it was the New York Post was reporting the Pistons were interested in acquiring Damian Dotson,
he's played pretty good.
He's played pretty well. He's a sharpshooter from New York. That would be a lower move, a move you could probably make without getting rid of a move I would hope you do without getting rid of an asset. So that's a name to look at.
Get him for like a 2nd round pick or something, and
a future future 2nd round pick,
somebody else or something.
So I think I would be cool with that. Just depending on the price, of course. but he's a shooter that can stretch the floor because this team, they're the worst shooting team in the NBA.
Wow. I didn't even know that stat.
Worst shooting team.
But it doesn't really surprise me necessarily.
And all Dwayne Casey says is when shots fall, we'll win games. Well, of course, if shots fall, you're going to win games.
Right. That's why they were up in the 4 seed for a little bit until they lost 6 straight where they can't shoot for anything.
And the juicier rumor was, according to SB Nation, they came out with an article today on the LibertyBallers.com, which is their Philadelphia affiliate, that the Pistons, along with Orlando, have registered the most interest in Philly guard Markelle Fultz. So I want to ask you, Joe, how do you feel about the Pistons maybe making a move for Markelle Fultz?
That's so tough. It's another one that you have to really look at the asking price because he's struggled so heavily that it's hard to tell if he's ever going to really recover from it. And, people are already talking about him being one of the biggest busts in NBA history already, which, I don't
know about that
it's
yet.
like an argument, but at the same time, it's something you do have to think about, and you don't want to give up too much. I know he's a young asset, so that helps no matter what, just to take a chance on him. I'm not opposed to it.
Now, I wonder what Philly would want, though, from the Pistons. I pulled up the NBA trade machine here. They acquired Jimmy Butler. They sent away Dario Saric and Robert Covington. What's a player they would maybe want to take a gamble on? Maybe a Stanley Johnson? Some power forwards, a small forward. He's looked okay this year. Maybe Stanley Johnson and the future first-round pick might be able to get it done.
That's the other problem is I feel like Philly wants even more shooters, and the Pistons don't really have that. That's sort of the problem.
Maybe a Langston Galloway, kind of free up some minutes for what's his name? Luke Kennard when Reggie Bullock gets back. That trade works. Langston Galloway for Markelle Fultz. Maybe you attach a future first or a couple future second round picks. I could see that going down. He could kind of play that Marco Bellinelli role coming off the bench to kind of relieve JJ Redick because Langston's played really well. He's been shooting the ball really well this year, and I think a team like Philly would value having him coming off their bench or another option shooting the ball once they get into a series. So I think that might be something to put on the back burner as potentially a player that Philly might be interested in.
But if they make that trade, I would like them to either add a third team to get rid of Reggie or
what third
Ish.
team's going to pick up Reggie, man?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Reggie or Ish, potentially, just to free up the point guard slot. I would rather
you need to trade up. You need to trade one of the point guards.
Or just have another trade ready to go so that you didn't have this point guard discrepancy.
I would just bench Reggie straight up.
But then he's going to whine and complain like you said.
It's true, too.
So I don't know. Like, to have 3 point guards is kind of rough. Plus, Jose Calderon, what do you...
Well, I'm not worried about Jose. Jose knows he's not going to get many minutes.
Right. But I'm just saying, as a roster standpoint, you got to free up space.
And here's the other thing, too, when it comes to acquiring Markelle Fultz that is a little bit of a positive outlook if you're a Pistons fan. Dwayne Casey does really well with molding young players. We've seen it early on here with Bruce Brown playing way better than we've expected him. A second-round pick, getting a lot more minutes. He started a handful of games. He's a great defender.
Especially compared to barely ever seeing Kyrie Thomas.
Yeah. Stanley Johnson, he's played better than we've seen in a Detroit uniform. Yes, it's not great. It's not good, but he's actually producing a little bit. So I would have confidence in Dwayne Casey getting his hands on Markelle Fultz once what was the actual term of the injury? Do you like that?
For Markelle Fultz?
Yeah.
I don't know the exact one.
But it's like your mind-shoulder connection.
It's with his shoulder, yeah.
Yeah. Once that's cleared up, just hand Markelle the keys and let him do his thing. Just say, hey, you're going to get 25 minutes a night. Don't worry about it. Just go play your game. I don't know. I would be interested to see. I think that's a high reward, low risk acquisition for the Pistons, depending on what they end up giving up if they ever were to make a trade for him. A lot of Piston talk for us today, man.
I mean, yeah.
More than usual.
It's because we're at a crossroads here where they're about to fall under the playoff spot where they were just kind of climbing. Now they've lost 6 straight. The only team that's lost more games in a row is the Phoenix Suns right now.
And the Pistons are the most inconsistent team in the NBA, in my opinion. They start out strong, then they go on a 5-game losing streak. They win about 5 straight. Then they go on a 6-game losing streak. It's just all streaks with the Pistons right now.
And it seems almost every year that the Pistons lately have been, they come out the season looking strong, and then they just fall apart.
I think a lot of it is strength of schedule. Their strength of schedule to start off a year usually is pretty easy, and then once they kind of
But they've been beating the Warriors.
I don't know what that's about either. They beat the Warriors at least once a year, it
Yeah.
seems like. But yeah. Along the NBA, we got some breaking news into the studio. Raptors center Jonas Valanciunas underwent surgery on his dislocated left thumb. He will be out at least 4 weeks, so that's a little bit of a blow to Toronto. It definitely is a blow.
Ibaka and Siakam have
But-
played so well, though, this season.
Jonas has been their backup center, essentially.
Yeah.
That's a big blow because Jonas he's a top-tier backup center now, which is crazy because he was starting for so long.
Yeah. And he started a few games this season as well, but, I mean, they
They
have
go a
such
lot
good
by
depth.
matchup. They go a lot by matchup when it comes to that.
Yeah, and they can play small ball for a little while. I
Yeah.
don't think that will really affect them.
Yeah, they're a deep team too. I want to touch on something when it comes to the rumor mill in the NBA. Kind of big news. I'm not sure if it's big news. I kind of knew about it, but it kind of got a lot of publicity over the last week or so. The Los Angeles Clippers looking to add Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant in the summer of 2019. Joe, do they have a chance of doing this?
I mean, they obviously have a chance. They have the money for it. I'm not sure if those two want to do that, though. You know, I'm not 100% sure. Like, Kawhi is starting to seem like he likes Toronto a bit. I mean, he could be downplaying it a little too, but I don't know. It depends because Durant has talked a lot about going to the East, and then he can be opposite LeBron. But at the same time, him and LeBron have had a little bit of a beef lately, where Durant's kind of calling LeBron out for different things. So maybe, you know, you make it a battle of LA. I think it would be pretty cool to have both LA teams. I'm not a big Lakers or Clippers fan at all, but to have those two teams be maybe the two tougher teams in the Western Conference.
I mean, we saw that for a little bit when Kobe and Powell were playing for the Lakers, and then Blake Griffin was making his transcending into an NBA star with Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. I mean, the Battle of LA was such a huge publicity stunt, essentially, for ESPN and all those NBA marketing teams.
Even though the Clippers couldn't do anything in the playoffs.
Exactly.
But if you had Durant and Kawhi Leonard, it'd be pretty exciting. You have the couple of the best players all in LA. It's kind of boring as other teams' fans, but as an overall hype, I think it's kind of cool.
And if you think about it, too, I mean, the Golden State Warriors would lose Kevin Durant, but they're still would be a top-tier team. So you have Golden State, Clippers, Lakers, those three teams in the same state.
Right.
All having stars and being probably a top 4 team in their respective conference.
I still think I like Durant more if he went to the Knicks.
I'd agree with you.
I think
want to see him in the Knicks.
I think that would be a cool thing.
I wish the Knicks could get their act together so that they could make a case for Kevin Durant because, like we heard when LeBron and D Wade were having their little conversation post-game after Wade's last matchup against LeBron, it was either going to happen in LA or the Garden. And it didn't happen in New York.
Plus, you think about the Knicks, if they can figure out their point guard situation, you'd have Tim Hardaway Jr., Kevin Knox, Kevin Durant, and Kristaps Porzingis. That's a pretty strong starting lineup.
Especially in the Eastern Conference.
Right. But just to have like Knox, Durant, and Porzingis, I think that's a solid front court.
Knox has struggled a little bit this year, though. Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but he's shown signs of
he did
being
have a
good.
big game. He had like 25 and 15 the other night.
I think he'd fit perfect behind Porzingis and Durant because he's kind of a spark plug kind of guy.
So let's play hypotheticals here. If by some miracle the Clippers add Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard, are they the best team in the NBA?
Who do they lose if they sign those
Tobias
two guys?
Harris. They can't sign Tobias.
Okay.
And maybe Avery re-signed last year, so they still have Avery.
Which he doesn't really matter. He's done practically nothing.
He's like, I read a stat the other day. It was like by percentage, one of the worst shooters in the NBA.
I think the team would definitely be up there in the conversation because Kawhi and Durant play both sides of the ball really well. as we've seen, Durant has turned up his defense in recent years.
That'd be a top defense, especially with Doc Rivers as the head coach.
Yep, and you have guys like Montrezl Harrell, who's coming out this year playing really good.
He could be the Clippers version of Clint Capella.
And then you have a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is super long at the point guard. Like, they'd be a long team.
I think we're talking ourselves into this, Joe.
I mean, it would be exciting. I would rather see maybe them split up because I'm starting to get a little bit tired of the super teams.
Me too. I'd like to see some diversity in the NBA when it comes to that.
But for individual matchups, it could be fun.
Yeah. So, is your official opinion then that it would be good for the NBA if Kawhi and KD join forces with the Clips?
Overall, man, I don't know if it'd be good for the NBA. It'd be good for their Christmas game, for sure.
Definitely would be.
That would be a for sure Christmas game. But is it overall for the NBA? I don't think so. Maybe financially it would be, but as a fan perspective, I don't think so. I think people would rather see Durant. Honestly, people would rather see Durant like on the Magic or something. They'd like to see him fail at this point. I like Durant, but I think he should go somewhere by himself to make more of a statement.
I agree with you, and I think that might end up being the case in in Kevin's camp, what they're trying to make to him. If you had to put a favorite to it, who is the favorite to land with the Clippers? Kevin or Kawhi?
I would say Kawhi, because he kind of talked about it before going to Toronto, that's one of the teams that he was looking at. So I think that would be the more likely scenario. And I also think Kevin Durant would rather be on the opposite side of LeBron and be able to maybe meet in the finals.
For sure. I completely agree with that. And without further ado, that's the show for this week. Happy to be back on the airwaves, talking some hoops, talking some football. No Malik today, so we don't have any last word. Joe, I'm going to have to leave this one to you. You got to come up with something here to fill it on the spot.
All right.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next week, hopefully. Catch you next time.
Bye. The Lions are still in the playoff hunt. Come on.